First of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Habi Kumara. I work in Badan Pusat Statistik, Aceh Province. Before I start my presentation, I would like to say thank you very much for I-CMME for give me an opportunity to present my paper with the title The Impact of the COVID-19 Pandemic on Tourism Sector in Indonesia using structural path analysis based on interregional input-output metrics. Okay. As we know, COVID-19 is a global outbreak that has had a devastating impact on both the human and social dimension. After appearing in China, the pandemic spread rapidly to 210 countries, including Indonesia. The COVID-19 pandemic was a big shock to the global economy, including Indonesia. The economic was in decline for at least the first half of 2020, and the decline may take longer if containment measures for the COVID-19 outbreak are not effective. The number of positive cases of COVID-19 in Indonesia, based on the announcement of the government spokesperson for COVID-19 management on November 15, reached 467,000 people. Meanwhile, the spread of COVID-19 around the world reached 54.93 million, of which 1.32 million people died. This shows the COVID-19 has become a global problem and has caused disruption to global domestic supply chains, financial market volatility, consumer demand shock, and negative impact in key sectors such as travel and tourism. In Indonesia, as we know, we have many tourism objects that every year million people come to Indonesia for tourism in Indonesia. But in this figure, here you can see the blue line is the foreign tourism visit Indonesia in 2018. Green line is foreign tourism visit in Indonesia in 2019, and red line is foreign tourism visit in Indonesia in 2020. You can see the difference in 2018, 19, and 20. There are start from January, February, March, April in 2020. Foreign tourism visit has been declined so dramatically. The World Bank notes that the impact of COVID-19 on the world economy caused 92.9% of countries in the world to experience a recession, including Indonesia. Transportation and warehousing sector experienced the most significant decline in growth compared to other sectors. And the second, followed by accommodation, food and drinking sector, which was minus 22.2 in the second quarter and minus 11.89 in the third quarter. This provides an initial picture that the tourism sector in Indonesia is most affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. Judging the condition of the national economy that is experiencing a recession due to the COVID-19 pandemic, in this paper, the author will examine the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the tourism sector in Indonesia as the most effective sector using the interregional input-output or IRIO approach. So, I can say to you that the purpose of this journal is for examine the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the tourism sector in Indonesia as the most effective sector using the IRIO approach. Before we start for the result, I will tell you about the literature or tools that we use for analyze the tourism sector in this paper. We use input-output analyze. Input-output analyze as the theoretical framework is an applied economic tools in a market economy. The input-output table show output structure, value add, intermediate consumption, supply and demand between sector. Input-output analysis can predict the impact of economic change between final demand and output total value added, import tax and labor force. It can also explain the leading sector and the impact between other sectors. IRIO or IO table. We use this for main source for our analysis. From this table, we calculate backward and forward linkage. The forward linkage describes how an increase in output of certain sector will encourage an increase in the output of other sectors. For backward linkage describes is an increase in the output of certain sector will increase the input demand of other sectors and focus on demand structure. And the other, we use multiplier formula to IO table. There are multiplier measure the total effect on either output, income, employment, or value added given the increase in one unit of output of a particular industry. From backward linkage and forward linkage, the result later we break down with the structural path analysis for reveal the how the tourism sector affected to other sector in Indonesia because of COVID-19 effect. It can be revealed with structural path analysis, because structural path analysis the SPA idea is to the unrevealing of the relative inverse by means of series expansion of the direct requirement matrix. This allows the analyst to investigate impact that are caused directly by final consumption to those caused in the first order away from those in higher orders. The use of SPA has only been applied statistically often for extracting the main upstream impact of product or organization in this paper. By applying structure path analysis technique, we seek to investigate the effect of change within the decrease of foreign tourists in Indonesia on the tourism sector. And the result for our analysis in analysis of linkage of the tourism sector using the IO model, you can see five provinces with the highest contribution from the tourism sector to the regional economic were Bali at 34.82%, Special Region of Yogyakarta, East Nusa Tenggara, Special Capital Region of Jakarta, and Banten. Meanwhile, the five provinces with the lowest contribution from the tourism sector to the regional economic were South Sumatra, East Kalimantan, North Sumatra, West Papua, and Riau. We can see this for the result of analyze the linkage of tourism sector using IO table. In general, the result of backward linkage and forward linkage analysis in the tourism sector in province place West Sumatra, East Kalimantan, North Maluku, Central Kalimantan, and North Kalimantan as province with the highest backward linkage and forward linkage index in Indonesia. This is a counterproductive to the result of the analysis of the proportion of the tourism sector to the previous regional economic, where the province with the highest contribution of the tourism sector to the regional economic were Bali, Special Region of Yogyakarta, East Nusa Tenggara, Special Capital Region of Jakarta, and Banten. To be able to explain further the result of the backward linkage and forward linkage index, the sectoral linkage in a region need to be broken down to be compared with the tourism sector linkage in province whose tourism sector has a large contribution value. In the study, the breakdown process of the sector linkage was carried out using multiplier analysis and structural path analysis. With the multiplier analysis, you can see table show that the output multiplier related to the tourism sector with the largest value is the hotel and restaurant, which means that for each 1 unit increase in output million rupiah in the hotel and restaurant the sector is able to create additional output of 1.756 in the national economy, which means that each additional of 1 million rupiah in the hotel and restaurant sector to be able create additional output of 1.79 million rupiah in national economic. As for the sector such as water transportation, air transportation and other service, the multiplier output value as 1.67, 1.75 and 1.54 respectively. Furthermore, the income multiplier figure was also calculated, which was a measure that showed that every 1 unit increase in income or wage of a sector will increase the national economic in income by its multiplier value, and vice versa. The larger revenue multiplier in the tourism sector is the other service sectors. In the table 7, you can see hotel and restaurant is the biggest sector that affect of COVID-19 in Indonesia, which has a potential loss of 99.9 trillion rupiah. In the second is other service with potential loss about 19.95 trillion rupiah, and followed by air transportation and water transportation. So that the conclusion of this paper, based on the backward and forward linkage index calculation, the province with the largest index backward linkage and index forward linkage value in the tourism sector are West Sumatra with 1.70 and 1.31, and East Kalimantan with 1.5 and 1.31. Meanwhile, Bali and special region of Yogyakarta, which have the largest proportion of output in the tourism sector in Indonesia, have relative low for index backward linkage and forward linkage. This show that the output value of the tourism sector in these two provinces are more absorbed in other sector. This means that the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the tourism sector will have a large effect on the economic of the region than the other region. In second, province with the larger output multiplier value in the tourism sector are Riau, West Java and East Java. However, the high multiplier value in the province are not in line with the development of the proportion of the tourism sector output regionally. This indicates that the development of the tourism sector in the province has a very significant economic impact on the development of other sectors. But currently, this potential has been maximally developed as a support for the regional economy. Structural path analysis in this study is more in-depth analysis of the backward linkage result. Based on the value, the SPR result in the tourism sector show that the main sector related to tourism are food and beverage industry and trade sector. The hotel restaurant sector affect the food and beverage industry by 18.11% and the trade sector by 10.87%. With the SPA we can see how the sector give a shock to other sector. Fourth, based on the result of the simulation analysis, it is known that in the period November 2019 to October 2020, the potential loss received by the tourism sector in Indonesia due to the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic reached 165.97 trillion rupiah. And the last, in the effect of the COVID-19 pandemic continue for the next 1 year, the potential for additional loss to the tourism sector will reach to 174.87 trillion rupiah. In detail, the impact of the tourism related sector is 164.1 trillion rupiah in the hotel and the restaurant. This is so big loss for Indonesia. And this is the reference I use. Okay, I think that's enough for my presentation. Thank you for the attention, and wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.